Greetings filmmakers, I'm Simon Jones from HitFilm.com here with an extended look at the portal effects from Ryan Connolly's film Portal Combat. If you want to know how the dimension rift effect works in HitFilm, you've come to the right place. And if visual effects and compositing is all new to you, don't worry, this is a really great effect to start off with. Here's the shot we're going to be looking at. In Portal Combat we created complex portal designs, but we'll start off by using the standard portal created by HitFilm's dimension rift effect. First up, make sure you've downloaded the project files that go along with this tutorial. There's an info card on this video which links right to them, or you can find them on the HitFilm website or in the YouTube description. Once you've downloaded and unzipped those files, open the project file inside HitFilm. In the media panel you'll find everything you need to get started. Open up the composite shots folder and you'll find 3 composite shots in there. In HitFilm, a composite shot is basically a timeline where you create visual effects. So double click the portal shot composite to open up its timeline. If you've already done some editing in HitFilm, you'll immediately notice that composite shots are somewhat different. Whereas editing is all about creating a sequence of clips one after another, compositing is more about creating a stack of layers. By combining layers in interesting ways, you build up a cool visual effect shot. That's the essence of compositing right there. So the interface layout I'm currently using is designed primarily for editing. This seems like a good time to introduce the workspaces. On Windows you'll see this icon up top, and on Mac you'll need to go to the View menu and then the Workspaces options. There are several built-in layouts and you can make your own as well, but for now just select the compositing layout. This reorganises all of the panels to provide a faster way of working when doing visual effects. Feel free to switch workspace and rearrange your panels whenever you want, according to your preferences and of course your screen size and how many monitors you have. So feel free to explore these pre-made composite shots in the project at your leisure. Pull them apart and see how they work. But right now we're going to start over and build up the shot from scratch. First we need to make a new composite shot. There's a bunch of different ways to do this in HitFilm. But what I'm going to do is find the silo video in the media panel and then choose Make Composite Shot from its menu. This opens up a window with the specifications of the new composite shot timeline. You don't need to worry about any of this in this particular occasion because it's all been based off the silo video. So HitFilm knows what you want basically. Hit OK and you'll be greeted with a brand new timeline containing that video layer. Let's add our portal. It's time to explore the most exciting panel in HitFilm 3 Express, the effects panel. Here's where you'll find a library of over 100 effects, all of which are highly customizable. Remember, 100 effects in your library doesn't mean you can only do 100 things in HitFilm. You can combine all of those effects in completely unique ways to design new visuals that we've never even thought of. So think of it like a toolbox. You might have only 30 tools in your toolkit, but you can use them to build anything. You can browse through the folders, but an easier way to find something, especially if you already know what it's called, is just to type into the search box. In this case, type Rift, R-I-F-T. The dimension rift effect is what we'll use for the portal. Effects can be dragged from the effects panel onto your timeline layers. So the obvious thing to do is drag the effect onto the silo video, right? Well, you can do that, but then you don't have an easy way to position the effect in 3D. It's just kind of pasted onto the camera and we don't have as much flexibility as we need. Instead, I'm going to remove the effect from there and go up to the New Layer menu on the timeline. This is where you can create special layers right inside HitFilm. In this case, we're going to select the plane option. Planes are simple coloured rectangles, but they're actually massively useful. I'm going to rename this one to Portal Host and then hit OK. The name doesn't really matter, it's just so that I can keep track of everything. So your view has now gone completely black. That's because we just created a large black rectangle, which is now the top layer on our timeline. Higher layers obscure lower layers. So if you click and drag on it in the viewer, you can now move that layer around, which will reveal the layers underneath. Okay, click the undo button, the little round arrow up here, to put it back to its original position. Okay, we can now drag that dimension rift effect from the effects panel again, but this time drop it onto the new portal host layer. In HitFilm, every layer can be fine-tuned and customized. So clicking this little triangle opens up the layer to show more controls. And if you head over to the controls panel, you'll find the controls for the currently selected layer over there as well. Okay, with the portal host layer selected, go to the controls panel and open up the effects group by clicking the triangle. Inside you can see the dimension rift effect, and clicking on that triangle shows the effect's controls. Right at the top you can see that the wall image is set to none. This means that we're just seeing that black plain rectangle behind the portal effect. What we actually want to do is see the side of the silo from our video layer. So click the menu and select the silo layer. Now comes the clever bit. So far you've got a couple of 2D layers on your timeline. It's now time to explore HitFilm's 3D compositing capabilities. There's immense power with 3D compositing, but we're going to have a gentle start here. So on the timeline you'll see a checkered square next to each layer. Clicking this reveals the dimensional options for that layer. We're going to switch the portal host layer from 2D to 3D plane. You'll be asked if you want to add a 3D camera. So without hesitation, hit yes. Okay, at first glance not much has changed other than funky green and red lines up in the viewer. Open up the transform controls for the portal host though. And you can see that the position and the rotation properties now have 3 settings each. These represent the X, Y and Z axes, or the Z axis if you're in America, which you probably are. So X is horizontal, Y is vertical, and Z is depth. Click and drag on the rotation Y wheel. As you do, watch the layer start to rotate in the viewer. We're now moving this layer around in 3D, and you can see that the dimension rift effect is actually rendering a 3D surface on the portal, which is pretty neat. Okay, to get the effect on the correct angle for the silo wall, the easiest thing to do is type values in directly. So click on the Y value and type 14, then hit enter, and then for the Z rotation change it to 2. This makes the plane align correctly with the wall of the silo. The effect is too large currently, and we can adjust the scale value to shrink it down. 62% works pretty well. To move the effect into place, the most intuitive way is to use the controls in the viewer itself. So with the layer selected, you can see these 3 coloured arrows. Clicking and dragging on the red one will move the portal horizontally. This looks super awesome right until I play the shot or move the playhead, and suddenly it becomes very clear that the effect is staying in exactly the same place while the camera moves around behind it. We need to get us some tracking, and HitFilm comes with built-in feature tracking, which is perfect for a shot like this. We need to track the movement in the silo video, so back on the timeline, open up the silo layer and look for the tracks section. You should be able to see a plus icon just next to it. If you can't see it, try dragging out the divider between the layer listing and the timeline to make a bit more room. Clicking that plus adds a new track to this layer. You'll also see that the viewer has automatically switched over to the layer view. The layer view is designed to show you only the selected layer without any other distractions. This is really handy for tracking when you just want to see the layer in its original form. Right in the middle of the frame you'll see 2 boxes. This is your first tracking marker. You can use this to tell HitFilm what it is you want to track. The orange box defines the actual feature you're tracking, while the green box is the area in which HitFilm will search for it on each frame. So on fast moving shots you're going to need a larger green search box than on slower shots. Does that make sense? Okay, this shot is great for tracking because there's lots of nicely defined detail. Click and drag on one of the corners of the orange box to enlarge it, and then drag inside the orange box to reposition it. There are lots of good places to track, but I'm going to go for this corner over here. There's lots of detail. Now, there's a lot of wobbly movement in this shot, and using a single tracking point like this is really good if the movement is only horizontal or vertical, but we've also got some camera rotation going on. So in the type menu, switch it to double points. This adds a second tracking point. The important thing to note is that this is still for the same track. HitFilm is going to compare the data from both of these tracking points to figure out the rotation of the shot. I'll position this one a little way away so that there's a separation of movement between the two, so that HitFilm actually has something to compare. Okay, let's track forwards by clicking the play button up on the track panel. This will really quickly go through the frames, tracking those features. It's now time to head back to that new layer menu. This time select the point option. This adds a point layer to the timeline, and point layers don't really do anything at first, they're just reference markers. But back in the tracker, and you might need to find the silo layer on the timeline and select that tracker again, we can now go to the layer menu and select that new point. Make sure rotation is ticked and then hit apply. This will take the tracked data and add it to the point layer. So up top, click the viewer tab to switch back to the main view. Then scroll up the timeline, find the new point layer and select it. If you now move through the timeline, you can see that the point layer is perfectly attached to the movement of the video. The benefit of applying tracking data to a point layer is that you can then use that point layer to control multiple other layers. Although we're not going to get that detailed in this tutorial, it is a good habit to get into, as it gives you a lot of flexibility when you're combining multiple layers and effects together. What we do need to do is link our portal layer to our tracked point layer. On the timeline, every layer has a parent menu, which is initially set to none. Find the portal host layer, open its parent layer, and select the new point layer. So the way it works is that a parent layer controls a child layer. It's that whole parent-child thing. Everyone knows how that works, right? And our portal is now magically attached to the wall, and you know how to track. And it's something that you'll use over and over again in all kinds of visual effects shots. Right now we have a disconnected portal. So let's select the portal layer, head back into the controls panel, and check out the expansion slider. Moving this opens and closes the portal, complete with some cool distortion of the background. Increasing the connection then dissolves the portal surface, revealing the view. So currently the view is actually just a hole looking straight through to the silo layer. What we need is to see the shot of the thug. Dimension Rift makes this really easy to do without requiring complicated compositing. In the media panel, locate the thug video and drag it onto the timeline. It doesn't really matter what layer you put it on, because we're actually going to disable its visibility by clicking the eye icon next to the layer. This makes it invisible without actually removing it from the timeline. Although we can't see the layer directly, we can still reference it elsewhere. So back in the Dimension Rift controls in the View section, I'll set the image to the thug layer, and there he is, perfectly composited within the portal. The depth and the exact position of the thug relative to the portal's surface can be further adjusted if you want. As with pretty much everything in HitFilm, there's a bunch of extra controls for customizing the Dimension Rift. I do encourage you to go play around, but remember that you can undo everything, as HitFilm tracks your actions via the History panel. That means don't be afraid to experiment. That's when most of the best visual effects shots tend to happen. We've covered the fundamentals for creating portal shots in HitFilm. The project files you downloaded also include the more advanced version of the portal used in Portal Combat. Now that you have an idea of how layers and effects work in HitFilm, let's take a peek into those composite shots to see how they hang together. So one particularly interesting aspect of the Portal Shot Advanced composite shot is that it actually has another composite shot embedded inside it. So once you've opened up the Portal Shot Advanced comp, check out the orange portal layer. If you double click on the orange portal layer name, it will then open up another composite shot timeline containing the portal design itself. As you can see, it's combining the Dimension Rift effect with a bunch of custom flame elements to create a more complex result. This particular portal is actually made up of 10 different layers, and by grouping them all into a specific composite shot like this, it helps to keep the main composite shot nice and tidy. And it means that this portal can be reused in multiple shots without having to build it up every time. Visual effects obviously is a huge subject, and we have a lot of tutorials on our YouTube channel, and you'll find lots of friendly people over on the HitFilm.com forums, more than happy to answer questions and share techniques. If you're just starting out on your VFX journey, you've got really exciting times ahead. But until next time, I'm Simon Jones, and many thanks for watching.